Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Bold and Beautiful. I am so glad that I have a special guest, no stranger to Bold and Beautiful, Adrienne Ross from the Adrienne Ross Show. So welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Kia. It's good to be with you again.
There's so much we need to talk about. Look, if you have not liked and subscribed to Adrienne's show, you have to do that as soon as you're done listening to my podcast. As soon as you like and subscribe to my podcast,
That's right.
Bold and Beautiful. But
Right.
you've got to subscribe to the Adrienne Ross Show. Look, Adrienne, tell us really quickly, if you can, what you're up to right now, because it's exciting.
What I'm up to in terms of the Adrienne Ross Show. We're really, the Adrienne Ross Show was something that I've had going on since 2021. And my tagline is A to Z, Adrienne is on it. So we can talk about faith, we can talk about politics, we can talk about education, we can talk about sports, we can talk about all that. But in the recent months, we've been talking a lot about sports and also branching into sports and culture. And the channel has grown so much because, as I always say, sports is a microcosm of society.
Right.
So whenever you start looking at sports, particularly basketball, we've been getting into women's basketball and the Caitlin Clark effect. And that has brought a lot of growth and a lot of conversations about sports and also other things. So yeah, we're growing. We're at over 23,000 right now.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been
That's
great.
incredible. Well, you know what, and I wanted to, as we were getting ready for this podcast, I wanted to just bring sports into it a little bit because I feel like that is the great unifier. Because people, it doesn't matter what your politics are, people love sports and it's about the game, and they can usually people can set it aside and say, okay, what's happening with WNBA? What's happening with the NBA? What's happening with the NFL? Whatever the soccer, whatever the sport is. If you know something, a little something about something for any sport, you can come together as a people.
Yeah, I used to would say that 100%, but I tell you what, it can be like a family, as you said, like anything, but it can be incredibly divisive and
Wow.
not, it's a political thing in and of itself,
True.
but it does bring people together who would never probably be together under any other circumstances. But
Right.
it's also a dividing line around, with things that are larger than did the basketball go in the hoop? I mean, there's so
Right,
much
sure.
involved in anything. But yeah, it has been for a large part a really great experience.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, listen, look, if you are, as you're listening to this podcast, go ahead, feel free to like and subscribe to the Adrienne Ross Show. You are going to learn so much about basketball, so much about sports, and just having people skills and having another perspective, hearing different perspectives, and really recognizing the truth. And that's one thing that I love about you, Adrienne, is that you don't mince words. You tell the truth. Doesn't matter if you like it or not. The truth is the truth.
It's the truth. Yeah.
You can't change it. It's just
No,
the truth.
it is. In fact, when I first started blogging years ago, I think it was 2009, that the name of the blog was Motivation Truth.
That's right.
Because that's the only motivation, truth. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's segue from sports and what you've been doing with the Adrienne Ross Show to the Olympics. I need your take on the whole recognition. First of all, the Olympics was amazing. I didn't catch it all, but I did catch snippets of some great races and competitions, and love the gymnastics team, Jordan Childs and of course Simone Biles and then you had Kate, is it Kate Ledecky? I think I said her, Kate Ledecky. Excuse me, Kate Ledecky in swimming. There were so many major people. Niall. Oh goodness, I'm messing up this guy's name. So many great and amazing athletes. But then you had a kind of piggyback of what you said about sports being a dividing line, that there was so much outrage over the Olympics, over the opening of the Olympics, and I watched pieces of it. We caught a whole portion of it, but the part that they were that people were talking about, Christians worldwide were talking about, was this whole idea of them mimicking the Last Supper, and really in a horrific way. That I did not see until after it came out in the news. What's your take on that? Was that a were they making a political statement, in your
Well,
opinion?
first of all, I watched not 1 second of the Olympics.
Mm.
So I didn't watch any of it. I saw images of that opening ceremony and I saw some snippets of the boxing debacle.
Oh yeah,
But yeah, in terms of that, from what I understand, from what I have read, from those involved in it, in the whole opening ceremony, Last Supper, supposed what do you call it, denigration. um
right,
it did involve something else. I don't remember the name of I don't remember the name of what
right.
they were
Something
supposed to do.
mythology.
Right, but they, for mythology, I want to say
Yeah,
Dionysus, I don't know, but
yeah,
but they also did admit that that was the Last Supper was um part of the inspiration for that,
right.
and they said the whole intent was to bring people together or something, which is a complete misunderstanding. I'm going to be nice about it and call it a misunderstanding of what the vast majority of the people value, and that, of course you knew that people were going to be offended by
Of
that.
course.
So yeah, I didn't, like I said, I didn't watch it, I didn't like it, and so that was the end of that. I heard the closing was sort of satanic, if there could be such a thing as sort of satanic as well.
Mhm.
I have seen no snippets from that at all. So I'm not
Right
much
now,
help
see,
on it because I just didn't want to be bothered with it after.
right. Well, I was annoyed by it because I had been checking the calendar, looking forward to the Olympics, and I did watch many of the events, some of the events
Mhm.
along the way, and to see just what I love about the Olympics is that we have all of these countries come together, all of these athletes. They have they have sacrificed, they have worked hard, they have poured their all into the giftings that has given them for
Mhm.
this particular competition. And I love to see that competition, and I love to see that they can all rally around one another and celebrate each other's country, and their level of discipline
Mhm.
to the event that they're participating in. And to me, it signals the Olympics has been a sort of a political tool, if you will, over the centuries, over the decades, I should say, or over at least a century. And and I think that it's been a unifier, it's been a divider in some cases. But when people stand up and they stand for their country, I feel a sense of patriotism. And I was definitely disappointed by all of this push, this propaganda, this pushing of agenda of the LGBTQ, transgender, trans, just some things that are just off the wall. In fact, that you'll hear people from the LGBTQ community and the trans and those who are trans that will say, that makes no sense. Even I
Yeah.
wouldn't be interested in that. It just doesn't make sense. So
Yeah.
what do you say? What do you think about that whole agenda? And that will segue that into what just the political climate is right now.
Well, I got tickled because I'm listening to you give the
The initials.
the alphabets and stuff. I was just like, how do
Yeah.
you, like, trying to keep it straight? Like, excuse the pun there, trying to keep it straight. But what what do I think of the whole agenda? It's rampant. I mean, it's so in your face.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like they want to force everything down everyone's throat, and then they want to accuse people of not being accepting and everything, and it's sort of like you're the one making the whole big thing.
Right.
Just go run. I mean,
Exactly.
let's shoot the basketball, right? I mean,
Right.
so that's really, especially when you're talking about something like the Olympics, like you said, something that's it's full of patriotism, whether it's USA or or Team
Right.
France or whatever it is. It's sort of like, okay, cut the whole thing out. And that was what you saw in the opening ceremonies too, if I understand,
Yeah.
the whole drag queen show and the whole
Sure.
thing. And you got, half dressed and stuff, and you got people's children. You want them to be able to enjoy the
Right.
Olympics and all that. And you're throwing all this stuff at everybody and making a whole issue instead of let's just have some wholesome sports and let's all come together.
Right.
Even though we're competing against each other, we can come together in the spirit of competition, in the spirit of patriotism,
Right.
and leave all that other stuff out of it. It's so in your face, and it's intended to be.
It's
And
intended
so
to be.
it's
Yeah.
intended to be. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not like, oh, really? No, it is. It's bold. There used to be a time when certain things were just sort of not quite so in your face. Now it's like, yeah, we don't like with the Last Supper. We don't care for you, and we're gonna let you know. We're not trying to
Right.
step in,
Exactly.
Yeah,
Well, and I feel like that's one thing. I'm glad you said that because I think it's one thing to say, you know what, we want to speak out against this. We don't like Christianity. We don't like what you stand for because we're doing this. That's, you have your opinion. By all means, go ahead and say that. But to sneak it in and then pretend like you didn't do it is what gets me. And
yeah,
I feel like, that there are these sort of outlying groups are so interested in wanting respect. You're human, so I respect you. Whether I agree with how you live your life, that's a whole different story. But I can still love you and respect you. I think that
yeah,
this whole agenda that is creeping into every area of our society, from education to sports to whatever it is, to the grocery store, to ads, to Target, to Walmart, to everywhere you
yeah,
go,
everywhere.
TV shows, is just disrespectful.
Yeah,
How did that conversation even change?
yeah. It's disrespectful. Um, and you're not allowed to disagree. Like if you have an agenda, whether it's the trans agenda, whether it's mutilating the bodies of children, whatever that is, you know, if you don't agree, then there's something wrong with you. So I have to agree with you, but you don't have to agree with me. So I have to lay down everything that matters to me and that I believe.
Mhm.
And like you said, I can be respectful and love everybody, but that doesn't necessarily I don't have to agree with you to
Right.
love you. And there are people who want to push that if they don't agree with this that you're doing, then they hate you. And I
Mhm.
refuse to allow that to be placed on me. No, I don't hate you, you know.
Right.
I don't hate you, but it sounds like you hate me if I
Come
don't agree
on.
with you, you know.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah, there's that. Like, you're an adult. You choose as an adult what works for you,
Mhm.
but don't expect me to play along, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And I think let's segue that into the next issue that I want to cover in the short time that I have with you, is what's happening right now with the election. I'm almost, I know that I have to see what's happening. I know that I have to be current. I know that I have to be aware, but I kind of want to turn it off and say, all right, let's get to November already. Let's get this over with.
Yeah. You're
It,
not alone. You're not
it's
alone in
just
feeling like that.
right, and mainly because there's so many lies out there, and you just
Yeah.
don't want to hear it. And
No.
it pains me, and I do want your take on this. It pains me to watch people and listen to other people, to our voters, to to American citizens, to the media, just repeat these lies as if we're supposed to believe it hook, line, and sinker. And I've had enough of that.
The media do a huge disservice to the American people. The media are an arm of the Democrat Party,
Mhm.
and they attack. It's almost, I heard someone say, I think it was today, that if the media are attacking you, then you must be doing something right.
Right.
Because they're not supposed to have a dog in the
That's
fight.
that's
I mean, it's one thing you have a podcast, I have a podcast. I'm not going to pretend that I'm not who I am.
right.
I'm a Christian, I'm a conservative, and that the media, they do a disservice to us, and it's a slap in the face of the First Amendment
Yes.
because we can't trust them. They twist things, they manipulate things, and they play on the emotions of people. And so it's just, it really is disgusting, the lies and all that. And I'm like you, sometimes like I wish I could bury my head in the sand, because oh my goodness, they're just flat out lying,
Right.
the politicians. And yeah, and you gotta filter through all of that stuff, because you hear this stuff like the Democratic National Convention, or whether you're talking about the Republican convention, whatever it is, you hear some of these things and it's like, okay, so what is the truth? Like,
Right.
what really happened? Because
Give
they
me the
will
rest
flat
of the
out lie.
story.
Yeah, they will
Yeah.
flat out just lie to you.
Yes. And
Yeah.
expect you to believe it. So yeah, I caught your Substack, your article on why you did not watch the DNC. And kind of along those lines. So I watched some of it because I wanted to hear, and I teach students, and it's election year. I've got seniors, I've got some who are voting, and I
Right.
want to be able to have that conversation because they're bringing up both sides. So I need to have some skin in the game in that. But I tell you what, I was just like, that is so not true as I'm listening to some of these things that are being said. And then what I really enjoyed about the Republican National Convention, I don't know if you saw some of that, was the people who spoke on, not necessarily on behalf of President Trump, but on behalf of conservative values, and on
Mhm.
behalf of the military, on behalf of their brothers and sisters who fought for the country, for patriotism, and for family, and for life. One thing that I heard, and this isn't rampant in the news, and main reason I wanted to do the podcast this week, and kind of discuss politics a little bit, was the issue of women's health. And a few podcasts ago, I did talk. A couple of podcasts ago, I talked about women's health, and that abortion not being, um, it's not really about women, though it is about, it's through women, but it's really about the children. And are we saving babies, or are we not saving babies? What is it that we're doing here in America? And so you hear all these politicians talk about, you know women's health. They don't trust women. I think Kamala Harris said that they just don't trust us. They just don't trust us. I'm like, well, okay, what how do you reconcile that with not protecting the most vulnerable of our society?
Yeah. Yeah, the children, it's biblical. You always go after the children. You sacrifice the children. The evil does. I'm
Mm.
saying. Um, and it's sad, because I mean, you talk about the Democratic National Convention. You talk about the, Vice President Kamala Harris, and her running mate is Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, and he is adamant about child, trans surgeries,
Yeah.
child mutilation, and he does, and he says, come to Minnesota, and you can do that. If your state doesn't allow whatever, or if your mama doesn't allow it, you come right here somehow to Minnesota, and this is a refuge state for that. And we will do this without parental consent. And they want
Mhm.
to take custody away from parents if they
Yeah.
don't want, Johnny to become Jane. So
Right.
it's really, it's wild. It's almost like science fiction, you know.
Yes.
So yeah, and the DNC also had Planned Parenthood was there with the abortion truck
And
offering,
vasectomies.
yeah, vasectomies and 25 free abortions. Like it looked like a ice cream truck. Go in
Unbelievable.
there and they can do that. And you said about the children, because they used to say, safe, rare, and legal,
Mhm.
for abortions. And I say right there, that tells you something, because why would anything have to be rare if it was okay?
Mhm.
So deep down inside, it's not okay, because otherwise it's like, but now it's not
Right.
safe, rare, and legal. It's, they have the movement Shout Your Abortion, and
Right.
let's have a mobile truck come through and do this. And and they call it women's healthcare. Like, they don't care about, I mean, there's some who won't even Kia say that even up to the moment of birth,
Absolutely.
that it's so that oh yeah, children don't have any rights at all, or anything, that they don't want to touch that. They don't want to flat out say, well,
Mhm.
no, it's between a woman and her doctor. I mean, it's just, it blows my mind.
It
Yeah.
blo and I feel like, this is something we couldn't have even fathomed in our
No.
country. I mean, I've heard, we've talked about it, and I've heard it in church, I've heard it preached, I've heard it prophesied even, in the Bible it tells us that, these the end times, people are going to turn against people, families against families. Um, and we're going to see evil running rampant. But in my mind, I don't think I could have ever thought that,
No.
that anybody would advocate for, certainly advocate for, up to the day of birth, right
Oh,
before birth, and advocating for, there are things that children cannot do. They can't drive until they're 16 in most states. They can't drink until they're 21 in most states, but they can change their whole makeup of their body. It
that's
just is literally
they
insane.
can't even take an aspirin in school without
They can't.
without parental permission.
Right. They can't
But
be absent. They can't have an excused absence without a note from their mom, their parents.
right.
And they can absolutely take medication, take hormone therapies, and mutilate their bodies.
But
That it just doesn't. It's just not
well, there's a
logical.
lot more going on,
Absolutely.
the vasectomies, the abortions, and a lot of it. Some of those people out there that are bankrolling stuff,
Hmm.
they're really into population control
Right.
and less people on the planet, and
Right.
nothing like chopping off Johnny's wing wang, to help make that happen. So
Exactly.
there's a lot of, you know.
Ooh. So, do you think we're becoming more like communist China?
Listen, those of you who've never read the book The Giver by Lois Lowry,
Mm-mm.
read the book
That's
because
right.
there's a lot of the community controls a whole
That's
lot of
right.
a whole lot, and unfortunately, it's so odd to me because you hear one party saying, you hear the left saying Trump is just he's a dictator. He's just
Mm.
that's what he wants, and I'm kind of thinking that you guys, you know, I,
Right.
you know, and there's footage of Vice President Harris saying, I can do this. I had the power to do this, that, and the other thing.
Right.
So, it's we better vote wisely.
That's what I was gonna say. That was my next thought, is that how do we change, or how do we promote and, encourage people to get out and vote, and to vote their conscience? Like, if it doesn't make sense, it's because it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, well, that's a good one because I've been thinking about that myself as well. Because I think about the vast numbers of people who do vote against their conscience. It's I'm thinking these are the same people, like I'm with her signs and all that. I'm like, the her people, that party, these are the same people who, we're gonna let people get fired if they didn't get an experimental shot,
Right.
that let your grandma and your mom die alone,
Right.
that don't want your children to have choice of education, whereas their children go to the best schools, who don't
Absolutely.
want you to be able to protect yourself with this through the Second Amendment,
Mhm.
but they've got armed guards. These are the same people who are letting all these people come into our country,
Right.
and we don't know where they are, bringing in fentanyl and taking jobs and all this stuff. These are those people.
Right.
And on November 12th, after the election sometime, you're gonna be complaining about these same things.
Same things.
But you voted the
That's right.
Democrat, and I want to make this a political, I'm just telling the truth.
That's right.
You look at the who runs cities.
Yep.
Democrat run cities have always been a mess. They're a mess, and they a mess, and we continue to vote over and over again. It's like, why don't you try something different?
Right. Right.
And inflation is you know it's and then they want to tell you, oh no, it's really better. Look, how you gonna tell me that I got?
Right. My wallet does not say it's better. Let me tell you.
I was better off 4 years ago for sure.
Right.
They're like, oh no, that's your imagination. Okay.
Insane, insane. Well, I love the commercials, and I love the rhetoric, the legislation, or the executive orders that are coming out now. And oh, that we're putting down gas prices, and all these little things they're putting in order, before the election. And I'm thinking, okay, yes, that could be beneficial. But will it last? And why are you? What's your motivation?
And
And
why
I
did you
feel
do it
like
before?
that in and of itself is a lie.
And why didn't you do it before? There's some
Exactly.
things that we're hearing now that you're running for president. You're saying on day one, I'm going to do whatever. And they're
Right.
like, yo, day one was in 2021.
Right. 3.5 years ago, lady.
Yeah, that was your day one.
That was your day
You
one.
haven't done anything, and you're not taking questions that are unscripted, and
Right.
it's
Look, let's make an assumption. Let's just say Kamala Harris needs to remake herself. Do you think she could, and would she say, I didn't have much power as vice president. I don't have much power as vice president. They told me to do this, do this, do this. But as president, I promised to this, and she does a 360. Would that be believable?
she's already done three. She's already backtracked on, I think, 5 things that
Well, she has, but she's not called out Joe. I mean, the only way that makes sense in my mind is, I'm sorry to cut you off, but the only way that makes sense in my mind is that she was stuck and held down, tied to a chair, if you will, as VP, and could not do that. And the only way out of that is for her to be open about it and say, this is what happened.
Well, I mean, she could try that. You know, she could give it a try. Right now, I mean, she's not making herself available. I honestly think the reason why she's not making herself available, and even the left wing media are getting annoyed
Yeah.
because it's been quite a few. We're going over 30 days now of her not,
Right.
going unscripted. I think she's stealing away. Number one, because she can't talk unscripted. It's word salad. Nobody
Right.
knows what she's talking about unless you want to bring an interpreter everywhere you go. A
Right.
translator, there's that problem. So that's part of it. But the other part of it is I think they're getting her story straight on what it is she really does believe.
Right.
Because she believes whatever is, like many politicians, and not just her,
Right.
but many politicians believe what is politically advantageous.
Mm-hmm.
So she got to decide what she believes based on how the wind is blowing.
Mm-hmm.
However, we do know that she is considered one of the most radical senators.
Yes.
And so we know that. It was sort of like even with Obama, he was very bold in certain areas where he was radical.
Mm-hmm.
So same thing with Tim Walz. And they,
Right.
as the saying goes, when people show you who they are, believe them.
Believe them.
And so we know that she's radical. As far as policies or whatever, I don't know what she's planning on doing, but I can assure you, barring a miracle from the Lord, it's going to go the radical direction.
Mm-hmm.
Now
Right.
she's talking about, what are they talking about? Taxing is it called unrealized gains?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and I didn't know what that was, but I heard a little something this morning or yesterday, right? So that is, if you have equity, even
Mm-hmm.
though you don't have the money in hand, then they're going to tax those things. And I've heard from expert, economists, and that would totally ruin. It would be a disaster.
Sure. Well, especially because there are so many small businesses, especially with the influencers, media businesses. How would that affect them? Now, again, I'm with you. I'm learning too. I don't know. I'm not an economist or anything like that, or even remotely close to that. But I'm thinking, how can she say that she is for the middle class, is planning to help the middle class, but taxing, implementing that kind of a tax when the middle class is one of the strongest um, parties that
Yeah.
are participants in the economy,
Right.
especially with small businesses.
Yeah. I don't know what she's doing. I really,
Does anyone? Okay, wait.
yeah, no, I don't. I mean, I don't get it. I don't, for, like I said, from what I understand, I mean, you're basically trying to tell people that they're not in the situation that they're in,
Mhm.
and I don't know if she knows what she's doing, and she seems to be copycatting some things like the no tax on
No
tips.
tax and tips. Yeah.
That was a President President Trump thing,
Mhm.
and they were in the whole other direction of that.
Right.
And so now it's, no tax on tips. It's like you've gotten you spending all that time hiding, and that's the best you got.
That's the best you.
You know.
So do you think people are getting it? Like, people are waking up? Or is it just, I'm looking at YouTube, I'm looking at social media, and I'm seeing all these, random people talk about, look, we're not going to, we don't believe a thing you're saying, but is that the majority? Will that be the majority of people?
I think
Will
there
the
are a lot.
American people know?
Yeah, even before she was running,
Yeah.
there were people who were saying, I didn't vote for Trump before, but I'm voting for him now because he's got a plan. He's got a track record now. He was a good president.
Yeah.
In spite of all the mean tweets and all that other stuff, when the
Right.
rubber meets the road, he was a good
He was a good
president.
president. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and so people are like, I was doing much better than this border situation, this whole, I mean, yeah. So there were people who were turning around anyway.
Hmm.
But with Harris in the picture now, even though she was like one of the most unlikable politicians ever. Her
Right.
her rating, she just nobody can stand her.
Right.
Sadly, but true. And now I think a lot of other things are playing into it. She's a woman, which of course I don't
Sure.
know. They say they don't know what a woman is. There's no such thing, but she's a woman.
But yeah, but somehow they managed, sidebar, somehow they managed to capitalize on that aspect.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh
And then
my
right.
goodness.
Yeah. And then they identify with her skin color. And
Right.
so I hate to say this, but it is true, sadly, that there are people. I've thrown it out there before.
Right.
I've asked the question, what has she accomplished?
Yeah.
And I've gotten no answer about her accomplishments.
Right.
I've gotten answers about they'll bring Trump into the picture. They don't like him,
Hmm.
and somebody said the thing about her that I like is she's not Trump.
Right.
And
You know,
so
if that's your vote, go ahead and stand on that. But don't say that she's the best of what the Democratic Party has to offer.
they don't
What's
know she did.
right. Well, and then what's interesting about that um is that she has not talked about anything that she's accomplished as a VP. She's only gone back to Attorney General and as a prosecutor.
And,
So
and they couldn't stand her then.
right.
Because and this is the thing. If you want to talk about the whole race thing and who's going to help the black community and all those things we talk about,
Hmm.
Trump was the only one who did anything. Obama didn't even take
Absolutely.
his jobs tour bus to the black community. And
Right.
I remember some, like Maxine Waters and stuff, they were like, we don't know why he hasn't come to the black community. Trump is the one who said, you want to talk about HBCUs, historically black
Right.
universities? He made funding for them permanent. He
Permanently.
created opportunity zones for low
Absolutely.
income areas. The First Step Act, all these people who are locked up, Kamala Harris, for
Right.
nonviolent crimes, for smoking marijuana and stuff. And people can think what they want to think about that. But Trump said, we don't need these people locked up for nonviolent crimes. And Kamala Harris, who locked up folks for smoking marijuana. And then when they asked
Right.
her if she ever smoked, she cackles and said, yeah, you know. So it's weird though how they have because they have the media on their side. That a
Right.
lot of people don't know. They don't know these things,
Mhm.
and he all of a sudden Trump, whom everyone seemed to love before he decided to run as a Republican,
Mhm.
whether you're talking about Jesse Jackson or whether you're talking about Hillary Clinton or whether you're talking about Oprah Winfrey, they knew, they thought this was a wonderful man. He's helped the
Right.
black community. He's done this and that. He's provided
Right.
jobs. He decided to run as a Republican. All of a sudden, he's racist. I'm like, was
And
that
they forget all about that. Wait, I saw something the other day where Trump was, I think he was being interviewed by Larry. Oh, what's his name?
Elder,
Um, Say it again.
Elder or Sabato or
Older. I think he's passed away, but he was anyway. He was
oh
being Trump was being
oh
interviewed. And he said, well, if you ever ran and this is a long time ago, I forgot when it was, but he was much younger. He said, if you ever ran for president, I think you would be great. Who would you pick as your running mate? He said, Oprah. I love Oprah. She's a wonderful woman and we get along great. He's giving this raving review of Oprah. And people are funny. And so I think if America would just stop and
mhm,
listen, just
mhm,
stop and listen to what they're actually saying, I
mhm.
can't believe that they would say, yes, I believe all of that. I can't believe it.
Well, he just posted a note that uh Oprah sent him back in the day.
Oh
And
yeah.
she put this wonderful note about him. And then she ended with like something like, too bad we're not running for office because what a team. What a team we would make.
Right, right. I
But
tell you what, it's definitely wild. Um, do you think what do you think young people might be you're an educator, so what do you think young people might be the most interested in this election term?
well, unfortunately, we have a whole bunch of young people who are anti-Semitic
Mm,
and who are very much interested in the Palestinian issue.
mhm.
And so you see that on the college campuses, which of course seems to be the reason why she didn't choose the better person, the obvious choice for her VP,
Oh,
which would have
absolutely.
been
Joe
Governor
Shapiro.
Josh Shapiro of
Yeah,
Pennsylvania.
yeah.
You're not going to win without winning Pennsylvania, but
Right.
whole dynamic. So they're interested in that. They're interested in having student loans canceled.
Mhm.
So,
Of
you
course.
know, yeah. And so they and
They don't understand that it's not gonna be their loans that will be canceled. Those ones that don't have them yet.
I mean, but it sounds like,
Oh.
I want to be down with the one that I think I'm gonna get the most from,
Mhm, mhm.
and they've been conditioned to think that, what is the saying? If you're young and you're not a Democrat, then you lack compassion or something. But if you're old and you're not a Republican, then you lack intelligence or wisdom or something.
Intelligence?
There's this
Oh,
old saying, and what I bring that up because I think when you're younger, sometimes the way the Democrats frame things, they
mhm.
frame it in terms of, they play on the emotions and they frame it as if this is the compassionate. They'll open the border, everybody comes in.
Right,
They're not yet seeing that they just want these votes. And they want to,
right.
it's not helping them. It's sort of the same thing with the minimum wage. So they play on that, like, this is not livable, and it's sort of like, yeah, it's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be minimum. It's supposed to be the least you ever make. And so
Right.
if you continue to raise the minimum wage, then everybody suffers because the job has to raise prices, and they have to fire some people,
Mhm,
right? So, but they don't put all that together,
mhm.
so it's, and who are they listening to? That's
Right.
why I think that's why I think platforms like you have, or platforms like I have, or they're so important, because, and people need to support those, because you're going to find people who are going to bring the truth. You know, they're
Right.
not they're not the mainstream media, which is why other outlets have soared. You know, when Andrew Breitbart, started Breitbart, it was because, when Newsmax, or all these
Right.
other
Absolutely.
outlets, because
Yeah.
people are like, I'm looking for, I want to hear, the real deal, and
Right.
some were
I
like,
need the whole story.
yeah, and
Right.
some were like Fox, although I think Fox was more fair and balanced than your MSNBCs, you
Yeah.
know, but some people were like, I don't want to get all from Fox. I don't want to get it all from over here. Where can
Right.
I go where people are? And again, we have our own biases and stuff like that as well. But some of the stuff that we're seeing in the mainstream, it's not fair, and it
It's no,
doesn't.
it's not fair.
Yeah,
And the other piece of that is, well, for young people anyway, is social media. That has changed the game in so many ways.
yep,
That we don't really have time to digest information. I think
mhm,
it just comes there's so much so quickly. It's
yeah,
just, oh no, from one shock to the next shock to, I can't believe I heard this. I can't believe they said this. I can't believe so and so did this.
yeah,
We don't really have time to digest it and say, okay, what's true, what's not true, what's missing some truth,
yeah,
missing
yeah.
pieces, what's taken out of
Context.
context,
Yeah,
etc. And then a lot of young people, I know my students are, they have admitted they get most of their news from TikTok. So,
mhm,
who knows what they're getting from TikTok. I mean, it's not all bad, obviously, but because I don't know that anything is all bad or anything is all good per se.
mhm,
Because if it's by people, we're fallible. So we don't
yeah,
necessarily have the market on the whole story. We really do need to hear other perspectives. We really do need to hear different sides and different points of view so we can understand what's at stake,
yep,
and for any given issue per se.
yeah,
So, wow. So it's crazy. And I don't know, I don't want to take up too much of your time because I know you're busy. Things are happening. I so glad that you took some time to hang out with me. hang out with my audience for Bold and Beautiful. And, I do my best to try to stay out of political things, but there's just some things that, I mean, I like politics, so I have to work really hard to stay out of it. But
Yeah.
I do my best for this show, for this platform, because I really do want to encourage people and empower people to be who God called them to be. But there are some things that we just have to stand up for,
Yeah.
and truth is
Yeah.
one of them. We just have to stand up and be a voice, I think, and be a light and say, don't keep listen. Make sure you listen closely. Don't believe everything you see. Don't
Mhm.
believe everything you hear. And just because someone said it doesn't make it true.
Yeah. That's so true. And when you talk about your platform, Bold and Beautiful, I think it's so important too for your audience to say, you know what? Let me just pray and see where God leads me. Let me see what God shines light on. Just on Friday, you had Robert F. Kennedy Jr., a Kennedy,
Yes.
spend his independent campaign for president and back former President Donald Trump. And he spoke about 3 minutes about why. He
Hmm.
did say, keep my family and my wife and my family in mind, because I could tell it was not
Right.
easy. He got his family, the siblings and all the cousins or whatever. I don't know if you saw it. They released that letter.
Hmm.
Like, they're just disgusted with the whole thing. But I listened to what he said, and I listened to him say that this has been a spiritual journey for him.
Hmm.
And his passion happens to be healthcare of children. Why
Yeah.
are so many children having these chronic diseases and the pesticides and all that? So he obviously had a conversation with Trump, and he said, I believe him. So they're obviously going to be working together on this. And
Right.
he said, it's so important, the children, as you mentioned earlier.
Hmm.
And he said, and I don't believe the other side is going to do anything about it. So I'm going to take him at his word.
Hmm.
And he said, it's a spiritual journey. He said, I have prayed, and I felt his sincerity.
Yes.
I have prayed
I
about it. I have prayed, and this is what I feel that I'm supposed to be doing. So that's what I would say. Like you said, you don't like to be overly political, but the bottom line is, you know what? We're going to be bold and beautiful. We need to be bold enough to say, okay, God,
That's
what
right.
is it? What do you want me to see? What do you value here? And how
Right.
should I cast my vote in such a way that honors your beauty,
Yes.
God, and who you are? So yeah, pray about
Absolutely. Well, I love what Robert Kennedy said. He said, "If I don't do this now, I'm never
it.
going to have the chance to do it. I'm at that age where I
Yeah,
have about 10 years to
make a
complete
difference.
my purpose, and
Yeah,
it's now or never." And that's what I would say to our audiences, guys. If there's something in your heart, that God put something in your heart to do, it's now or never, because we don't know what tomorrow will bring.
that's right.
And so I agree with you when you say you felt his sincerity, and you know, I watched it a couple times just because I felt the same, and I
Mhm.
thought, wow, that is genuine. And
Yeah,
I may not agree with everything that he's done or
no,
everything that he's been about for,
no, mm-mm.
but if the man said, I have been on a journey, I'm going to believe that he's been on a spiritual journey and he's doing something that's going to put a smile on God's face, then I'm going to get behind that.
Yeah. And when you're serious, I mean, because make no mistake about it, he is a leftist. Like, he
Hmm.
is,
Yeah.
um, but what he's saying, like, I'm seeking God. I've
Yeah.
been I've been praying. And God's gonna honor that.
Yeah.
You're not gonna seek God and then he's gonna
Uh-huh.
say you on your own, Jack.
Right.
You know,
Absolutely.
so God must have said to him, God ain't gonna lead if the other side is so bad and it's gonna do major damage. God ain't leading him to that. You know,
Absolutely. Well, and
and
I love that you said that. And to maybe cap this off on this point is that you have people who said, well, Donald Trump isn't a real Christian, or so and so. You hear even some people on the left will say, oh, what, I prayed about this, or God. They bring God into the picture sort of randomly. Not to say that there aren't Christians on both sides of the aisle. I'm not saying one is completely right over another, but certainly the conservative. Viewpoint is on track with where we need to be, I think, as a country, and let the people handle our business, okay.
Mhm.
But um my point is that just because they don't line up with our own theology, any
Mhm.
person lines up with our own theology of where they should be doing this, this, and this, doesn't mean they're not, God hasn't chosen them for the position.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
You know?
God uses whom He will,
He
and
does.
you see that in Scripture, right? So,
Absolutely.
and think about it. Like, do I deserve to be used by God?
Right, right.
Thank God for His grace and His mercy. Like, I'm
Yes,
trying to honor Him, but I'm not perfect. I'm
absolutely.
not trying to be, blatant, blatant sin, or I'm not trying to do sin, but I
Right.
thank you for His grace and mercy because I need it.
Absolutely. And I think that if Christians can, one of the largest demographics that do not vote typically because they're just, oh, God will fix it anyway. Well, come on, y'all need to get out there and vote. If we can just say, look, God's got this.
Yeah.
If someone says, I'm relying on God, I feel like God is going to either have
Yeah.
them honor that.
Mhm.
He's going to back them up. He's going to lead them in the right way because ultimately the Lord knows where we need to go as a country.
Yeah, yeah, and we need to do our part, like you said.
We do our
A lot of times, letting God lead looks a lot like you moving.
Exactly, exactly.
So,
That's the
looks a lot
truth.
like you doing something.
Absolutely. Take some action. Take some action.
Yes,
Well,
yes,
it has been a pleasure. We've talked about a little bit of everything from
yes.
sports to politics to
Potpourri.
young people. A potpourri. I love that. A potpourri of topics. Sorry. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kia. I really appreciate the invitation and our conversation. Keep up the good work.
Absolutely. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Look, thank you guys for joining Bold and Beautiful. If you have not subscribed yet, please go to all the podcasts or any of the podcast platforms. I'm on them all, of course, on YouTube at Bold and Beautiful Life, and social media at Kia Cordeaux. And also, you would be missing a great benefit to yourself if you do not like and subscribe to the Adrienne Ross Show. And Adrienne, we can find you all over the place, right?
All over the place. Yeah, start at the Adrienne Ross Show on YouTube, and then in the every episode description, you'll find the social media and all the other things.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, it has been a pleasure as usual. Thanks again, and God bless you.
God bless you too.